StraighTAllDay.com.
You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques, all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is catching your rational lies. Yes, and that's a play on words. We're going to get into that in a second. But before we do, let me tell you, I want to have a daily motivation text message that I send out free of charge every single day. Message guaranteed to keep you focused, sharp, and on point. You want to receive that message, all you got to do is text me at my number, which is 305-384-6894. And every day when I send that message out, you'll be getting it straight to your phone. And I want you to text me while you're listening to this episode. Tell me the best insight you got from this masterclass here today. And I might even text you back, because I actually go through my text messages and respond to people's messages every single day. That's the first thing. Second thing I want to tell you, then we'll get into the material here today, is that Work on Your Game University is your next step. If you're listening to this show, you're enjoying this, and you're ready to take the next step in taking your personal and professional games. Because here at Work on Your Game, we help people on the personal level and the professional level. We don't limit it to just one, because all of this stuff is interconnected. At Work on Your Game University, you get access to 3 specific things we have there. First of all, my coaching programs. You want to be coached directly by me. There is one way to get in. You get on a call with us. We talk about where you're at, where you want to go, and if we can help you, we tell you how and what it will look like and what it's going to take. That's all at workonyourgameuniversity.com. We have access to all of our courses. There are 20 plus courses in there. I just added 3 courses at the end of 2022 on business building, transitioning to your next mission, and also your body, your health. Those are all in workonyourgameuniversity.com. And I send out 2 physical mailings every single month, my Bulletproof Bulletin and the Black Book, every month to every member of the university. All of those you can get access to all of that stuff, at workonyourgameuniversity.com. So the next step is going to Work on Your Game University and enrolling, so you can get a real life education with some real talk on some real things. All that said, let's get into the topic, which is catching your rational lies. So this is a masterclass about the habit of rationalizing, what rationalizing really is, which is, we just broke it down into rational lies that we tell ourselves, what it really is, and how it hurts us when we are on our journey to success. Rationalizing can be positive in some ways, but it also slows us down and hurts us in other ways. And today we're going to talk about in the ways that it slows us down and maybe keeping us from getting to where we want to be. Now, with that background out of the way, let's get into it. First of all, point number 1, topic once again is catching yourself in your rational lies. Number 1, first let's define the word rationalize. It means to attempt to explain or justify your behavior or attitude with logical, plausible reasons, even if these logical and plausible reasons are not true or appropriate. I like that definition. Human beings, the reason that we dominate the animal kingdom is not because of our physicality. We dominate the animal kingdom because of our ability to reason and create stories and explanations in our minds, whether true or not. Animals like zebras and cats don't have this ability. They can only deal with what is right there in front of them. So whatever they see, that's all they can do, and they can only respond to things. They react rather than respond instinctively. Humans, on the other hand, we can look into the past at what's already happened. We can peer into the future and predict what's going to happen. And because of this, we have the power to have dominion over animals who are, many animals are bigger, stronger, and faster than we are. But again, we dominate them not because of our physicality, but because of our intellect. We are simply smarter than animals. So this is because of the power and the size of our brains. But since no situation in life is perfect, so that's the part where rationalizing, telling stories to ourselves, or thinking about what has happened or predicting what might happen, that's where it is actually useful. We use this in an active, productive way, and this allows us to, again, dominate animals, even though they have more physical capabilities than us. Many of them do. But this is where because our brains are so big and we can dominate animals that way, here's the trade-off. Remembering that no situation, no thing, no person, no circumstance is perfect. There are always trade-offs to everything. So our brains are great in that way, and they've created this whole, if you look at the world that we live in today and all the technology and all the advances that have happened and that are happening and that will happen, those are all the results of the power of the human brain. Great things. But there are some trade-offs that come with it. And some of the trade-offs are some of the things, I mean, you just think to yourself. Now, when I go through my text messages every day and I ask people what their biggest challenges are, and I notice are some of the common things that I see from people. And often what they say, according to, I mean, if when I ask people and they get a chance to assess their own biggest challenges, often it's something mental. Dre, I'm not as disciplined as I want to be. I need to be more focused. I need to be more motivated. I need to be more consistent. What are all of those? All of those are mindset challenges. Now, there are other structural issues that lead to those mindset challenges, but if you ask people, these are the things that they say, those are all mental things. And where are those coming from? The same place that came up with the idea for the airplane and the gas-powered automobile and the smartphone, they all came from the brain. The fact that you're not as disciplined as you want to be, you're not as consistent or as focused or as motivated as you want to be, all of those are coming from the exact same place, the brain. So remember that there are always trade-offs for everything that we do in life, even the things that you think are great. There is a trade-off whether you are aware of it or not. So the downside, if you want to call it that, is with this ability to look into the past and the future, we also have the ability to make up stories about what is happening. And also, because of this ability to make up these stories in our minds, it allows us to do such in ways that do not always serve us, specifically with this habit of rationalizing, telling ourselves rational lies, stories, to make ourselves feel better about things that we probably shouldn't feel that great about. So we take something that's not where it needs to be, we come up with a story in our mind about why this thing is not great, and we allow that story to allow us to feel better about something that we probably should be very uncomfortable with. This is the habit of rationalizing. And the reason why this becomes a pernicious habit is because we can basically rock ourselves to sleep by telling ourselves the same story over and over again to the point that we start to believe it, even though it's complete bullshit. And then we end up doing absolutely nothing about this thing that's not okay. And then when someone like myself comes along and points out, hey, this thing is not okay, you've been telling yourself that story that it is okay for so long that the repetition of your story overpowers the one time of me pointing out that it's bullshit, and the story wins. So you keep rationalizing something that's not okay, and therefore you keep yourself mired in mediocrity or worse than mediocrity, because you've been telling yourself that story for so long that you have come to accept it as truth. And there's one thing when you know something is a story that you're telling yourself, is another thing when you accept something as absolute truth and you will accept nothing that goes against it. There's a big difference between the two. To give you an example, when I was in college and I ended up not playing my last year, the end of my college career, ended up not playing because I had a run-in with the head coach, who was the head coach who had come in. He had replaced the coach who had actually brought me into the school. I could rationalize that, and I probably did it many times, rationalize it in my mind. Well, the coach is dumb, he's an idiot, he doesn't know what he's doing. That's the reason why I'm not playing on the team. I did tell myself that story, but at the same time, I had to tell myself the truth, which is, Dre, hey, if you're trying to go to the next level in basketball, or you're trying to prove that you are one of the better players in whatever environment you're in basketball, but one of the things you got to do is actually play on the team wherever you're at and prove that you're good. But right now you're not on the team, so you don't even have the ability to do this. So I had the rationalization in my mind, but I also had the truth in my mind, and I had to ask myself, well, which one matters more? And that was where you have this difference between being right and being accurate. Now, being right was telling myself the story, because it served my ego. Being accurate was telling myself the truth, because it served the actual outcome that I was after. And because that accuracy won in my mind, I was able to focus on what's actually going to get me to the outcome, which was, all right, how do I get to the next level, the next level, the next level, and keep proving myself and getting some objective proof that I'm the player that I wanted to believe that I was. And that's what I did over the next few years, becoming a professional player. But had I just defaulted to and just giving rein to the story in my mind, the rational lies that I was telling myself. Well, I'm this great player, even though I'm not even on the damn team. Well, my career would end right there on the spot. And this is what a lot of people do. I'm just using this story as an example, but people do this all the time when it comes to your business, when it comes to your relationships, when it comes to your fitness, when it comes to anything that you're trying to achieve. You're not getting the outcome you want. You tell yourself a story that makes it okay that you're not getting that outcome, and you never ask yourself, hey, am I telling myself some bullshit here? Am I rationally lying to myself here just to make myself feel better? All right, this is you need to catch yourself here, because if you don't catch yourself in this, what you're going to do is, again, sing yourself to sleep with this story that feels good but does not help you do good. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is catching yourself in your rational lies. Number 2, the reason rationalization works, the reason why it works on all of us, and I just told you how it worked on me. And we do this to ourselves. Again, we do this to ourselves all the time. We come up with rational lies that we tell to ourselves damn near every day. The difference is not whether or not you do it, because every human being does this. The question is, when you do it, do you catch yourself doing it and tell yourself, hey, that's some bullshit that you just told yourself. That's some bullshit that I've been telling myself. Let me fix this. The reason rationalization works on all of us is because it allows us to craft a justifiable story for just about anything we do, any circumstance we find ourselves in, or any action that we take. That's what rationalization does. It basically allows us to create a cover story for anything that happens. So anything that you say, anything that you do, any situation you find yourself in, rationalization gives you the opportunity to come up with a story that makes it okay, even if it's complete bullshit. Even if the story is bullshit, even if your action was completely unjustified and unfounded and wrong and stupid, you can come up with a story that makes it okay. So let's see an example. So let's say you're driving on the road and you're on a 2-lane road and somebody just completely cuts you off because they swerved from the right lane into the left lane, and they clearly didn't see that the road was curving and they should have curved with the road, but they swerved into the wrong lane. Then you beep your horn at them and they beep their horn back and they give you the middle finger and they're yelling at you, and it becomes this road rage argument between you and the other person. And then the other person's think that they're completely justified for driving how they're driving. And then you point out to them, hey, you swerved from that lane to that lane and you didn't switch, you didn't signal or anything like that. You just swerved into the wrong lane. And they say, no, I didn't, no, I didn't, no, I didn't. And then let's say you were able to show them that they did indeed swerve into the wrong lane. And when they see that they did swerve into the wrong lane, you know what some people will do in that situation? That person who just got shown that they did indeed swerve into the wrong lane, they'll say, well, hey, I didn't see it. I didn't see the lane swerved. And so what did they just do? They just rationalized that their wrong behavior. They see that they did the wrong thing, but instead of saying, you know what, you're right, I was wrong, I apologize, I'm sorry for that. How often do you hear somebody say that? When's the last time you heard somebody say to you directly, you know what, you are right, I was wrong, I was in the wrong in that situation, I apologize, I should have caught myself, and they basically check themselves in the moment. When's the last time you had somebody do that? Just in the last year, how many times have you had anybody do that with you? How many times have you did it with anyone in the last year? Very simple words to say, but how often do you hear it? Very rarely, right? And even when you do hear it from somebody, often you had to browbeat them into actually admitting that they were wrong. Very rarely does somebody just come out and admit that they're wrong without being pushed into admitting that they were wrong. You got to be like a trial lawyer to get somebody to admit that they were wrong about something when they were clearly wrong. Most people never admit that they're wrong. They come up with justifications for why they did what they did, even when what they did was completely foolish and made no sense, and it's proven in black and white, and there's a bunch of people around them telling them that they're wrong. They'll just continue to defend themselves, right? That is rationalization. So if any of you didn't know what rationalization looked like in real life, now I just gave you a good example, and I'm sure you have seen plenty of people do this many times, and let's be honest, you've done it as well. All right, even if you don't want to admit it, you've done it too. We all do it. Very rarely do you hear somebody just come out on their own power, just admit, I was wrong about that. My bad. I'm sorry. I apologize. I was off. You were right. We have this ability to justify pretty much anything that we do. And the smarter the person, the better they are at doing this. All right. The more intelligent and more informed, the more knowledgeable a person is, the more tools they have for rationalizing anything that they say, think, believe, or do. It doesn't matter what it is. So if you're in really good shape, for example, do you know somebody who's in bad shape physically who has crafted a story in their mind to make it okay to be in bad shape? Of course you do. If you're good with your money, do you know somebody who's terrible with money who is capable of crafting a story to make it okay that they're in terrible shape with money, that they've made some bad decisions, but they come up with some justifications for every bad decision they made with money? Of course you do. You know people who do this. Do you know anybody who continually makes the same type of mistake in the same areas of life? They acknowledge that they made a mistake in that area, so here's where they do good, but then the very next week they go craft a story in their minds that make it seem like that mistake was actually a good idea. They make it seem like, oh, it was okay for me to have done that because, and then they came up with a story, and in between the time that they acknowledged the mistake, they went and just came up with the revisionist history activity and came up with a story that made that mistake seem like a good idea now. We can all answer these questions in the affirmative, and again, we have all been guilty of doing this. At times, we all do it. We are all very good at bullshitting ourselves. This is why this ability of catching ourselves in our bullshit, it matters a lot. And it's why we have to be very vigilant in catching ourselves when we are buying into our own bullshit, because anybody can do this at any given time. I'll give you an example. I remember I was in a conversation with a person not too long ago, and this person was basically trying to paint themselves as doing one thing. They were saying that, hey, I do A, B, and C. And I said to this person, well, hey, remember this situation not too long ago when you did the exact opposite of what you're saying that you do? I was basically calling them on their bullshit. All right, you said you do this. Hey, here's something that you're lying, because here's an example of you doing the exact opposite of what you're claiming that you do. And this person knew that I caught them red-handed in their bullshit. And instead of saying, all right, yeah, you're right. All right, so let me back up. Instead of saying that, here's what this person said. This person started to justify what they did by trying to blame other people for their actions that flew in the face of what they just claimed that they were doing. In other words, they were rationalizing. All right, they were rationalizing their hypocritical behavior by saying, well, what somebody else did led me to doing this thing that goes against what I claim I'm about. All right, they violated their own principles, but they came up with a rationalization for violating their principles instead of just saying, okay, all right, you caught me on that one. Most people, again, when's the last time you heard somebody just come out and admit, I'm wrong, you got me on that one, let me just admit that? How often does that happen? It happens very rarely. Again, even though they're very easy words to say, very rarely does anybody do it. Because we're all so good at rationalizing. And again, often the things that we rationalize, we told ourselves in our own minds that same story so many times that by the time we speak it out of our mouths, we've already said it in our heads 100 times. All right, and so we're not going to go against that grain. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is catching yourself in your own rational lies. Number 3. Now here's an exercise. Grab a pen and paper, open a document on your device, and here's the title that you put at the top of the page. Rationalize. Got it? You ready? All right, now here's what I want you to do. I want you to put a number 1, and I want you to write down all the rational lies you've been telling yourself to make you feel good about situations that you know are not acceptable. So if you've been telling yourself some bullshit about how your career is going to make you feel good about the situation, write it down. So write down what the bullshit is you've been telling yourself. You've been telling yourself some bullshit about this relationship that you need to get out of that makes you feel better about it, but you know is not right. Write it down. You've been telling yourself some bullshit about what you're doing with your money that is making you feel good about the situation, but you know is not right. Write it down. You've been telling yourself some bullshit about what you're doing with your body and how you're maintaining your fitness and health and nutrition that you know is not right, but is making you feel okay about the situation, but you know the situation is not okay deep down. Write it down. I want you to write down all the rational lies that you've been telling yourself. And I guarantee you got a few. Every human being on the planet has a few. Why? Because none of us is perfect. Everybody has some rational lies that they tell themselves. Write them down, and then you need to look at that list and pick one and start to go to work on fixing it. You don't have to fix all of them at the same time. That might be too much. It might be an emotional overflow for most people. But pick at least one and start going to work on it. All right, what do I need to do to fix this situation? All right, what bullshit have I bought into on my own? I bought and sold my own bullshit to myself. And I bought it so many times that I've almost got to believing it as a truth when I knew it was some bullshit from the beginning. And I've sold myself the same story so many times that I forgot it was a story. Let me fix this. One thing, just pick one thing on the list. Oh, you got a lot. Okay, so when this episode is over, write down the rest of them, because you got more than one, and then pick one and go to work on it. And after you address that one, then go to the next one, then the next one, and then the next one. What have you, if you need some help coming up with more things on your list, what have you made up a story about in your mind that allows you to feel okay about something that you should be uncomfortable with? How long have you been telling yourself that story? Because see, some of the things that you've been telling yourself rational lies about, you've been telling that lie for so many years that you forgot that it was a lie. This is where it gets real right here. All right, this is like the therapist chair, therapist couch that we're talking about right here. Some of your rationalize are things you just came up with 3 weeks ago, but some of them you came up with 10 years ago. And you've been telling that lie for so long that you forgot it was a lie. But now we're going to uncover that. Because see, as I say often here, is we got to get the garbage out before we can put the good stuff in. See, if the garbage is in there, the garbage has been there longer. It has more experience in that. It has more experience having a home in your mind than the good stuff does. So it's going to beat the good stuff out. You can't put good stuff on top of garbage. Right? You can't plant flowers in a yard full of weeds. You got to pull the weeds first, then you plant the flowers. And then you got to make sure that the weeds don't come back. So write down all the rational lies that you've been telling yourself. You probably have at least 10 rational lies that you've been telling yourself. You don't have to tell anybody about them. To keep this list to yourself. But you do need to go to work on it. How long you've been telling yourself the same story or the same bullshit that you know is bullshit? Now that you're thinking about it, you know it's bullshit. What would you be responsible for doing if you had to come clean about that rational lie? Just come clean to yourself. What would you have to do to fix that lie and turn it into a truth? Because see, these require you're going to have to make some changes. This is the start of holding yourself accountable. All right, you want to hold yourself accountable? Here's how you do it. Catch yourself in your nonsense and admit to yourself that is nonsense, and then take the action such that the nonsense does no longer exists. That's all you got to do. Yes, that's all you got to do. All right, did I make that easy for you? Let's recap today's class, which is catching yourself in your rational lies. This is about the habit of rationalization, what it is, and how it hurts us on our journey to success. Number one, rationalization means to attempt to explain or justify your behavior or attitude with logical, plausible reasons, even when they are not true, even when they're not appropriate, even when they're not accurate. The reason we dominate the animal kingdom because our ability to see around through things. We can look backwards, we can look forwards. We are not just stuck in the moment, reacting instinctively to everything like animals do. That's the reason we dominate animals, even though they're bigger, stronger, faster than us. We're simply smarter than them. We got stronger brains. But the flip side, the downside of our ability to look around and through things and make up stories in our minds and predict things is that we can also use this ability to tell ourselves some bullshit and make ourselves feel good about nonsense. Number two, reason rationalization works is because it allows us to craft a justification with just about any action, circumstance, or inaction that takes place in our lives. So even things that are not good in our lives, we can come up with a story that makes ourselves feel good about it. And in my experience, the smarter the person, the more readily they can come up with rationalizations for their nonsense. The less intelligent the person, the harder it is for them to rationalize because it's hard for them to make up a story. They actually have to tell themselves the truth. The smarter individuals, all right, those of you with degrees, those of you with PhDs and master's degrees, and you've read a lot of books, the smarter you are, the better you are at telling yourself some bullshit. So again, that's the downside to being an intelligent individual, is that you are the easiest person to fool, and the smarter you get, the more readily you are to fool yourself because you're so smart. Number three, grab a pen and paper And right at the top of the page, Rationalize. Start with number 1 and start writing down all the lies you've been telling yourself to make yourself feel good about some things that you know are not acceptable in your life, some things that you know are bullshit, some things you know are nonsense that you will be very uncomfortable having to address. You need to write them down, and you need to pick one and you need to go address it. Whatever it is you need to do to address it, whether it's a change in mindset, whether it's a change in behavior, whether it's a change in the people around you, you need to make those changes. But first of all, we got to identify what the nonsense is. If you're not willing to confront the nonsense, we can't change it. All that said, text me. Tell me the best insight you got from this class. If you are really bold, you can tell me what's the piece of nonsense and bullshit that you pointed out to yourself that you're going to do something about. Text me and tell me what it is. My number is 305-384-6894. Make sure you reference the episode number so I know which one you're talking about. Text me and tell me what that is. I'm interested to hear about this from all of you. And secondly, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com, where you can get access to all of the courses, all of the trainings, my exclusive trainings. You get coached by me directly, and you can register to make sure you're getting my 2 physical mailings I send out every month, the Bulletproof Bulletin and the Masterclass Black Book. That is all at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre all day.